Welcome to your Health Facts podcast. Today we're going to be talking about losing fat without losing muscle.
Yeah, it's kind of a really important topic. People work so hard to build muscle and then they
Yeah.
go on a diet and they end up losing some of that muscle mass, and that's the last thing we want.
Right? We want to hold on to that muscle because it helps us burn more calories at rest. It helps us look and feel better, and it's important for overall health as we age. So
Of
how do
course.
we make sure that we're targeting fat specifically
Mm.
and not losing that hard-earned muscle?
Well, one of the things we came across is some research on what's called a 24-hour fast.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this 24-hour fast is that it seems to target fat loss while minimizing muscle loss.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they figured this out is they looked at a marker called urea nitrogen.
Okay.
And what happens is around 24 hours into a fast, this urea nitrogen starts to increase. And that's an indication that muscle is breaking down.
So that's how they kind of found that sweet spot, that 24-hour mark where you're really maximizing,
Exactly.
yeah, fat burning and minimizing.
You're trying to find that window where you're not dipping into that muscle loss too much.
Right. And so that brings up a good point that this is just one strategy, right? The 24-hour fast. But what about all the other hours of the day when we're not fasting? How do we continue to kind of prioritize fat loss even when we are eating?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's where um, understanding blood sugar and insulin comes in and
Okay.
how that impacts fat storage and fat burning.
So let's break that down a little bit because I think
Oh,
that's a topic that a lot of people hear about but maybe don't fully understand. So how does fasting kind of reset those blood sugar and insulin levels?
sure. So when you fast, what you're essentially doing is you're giving your body a break from constantly having to process food and deal with those fluctuations in blood sugar and insulin.
Right.
So when you fast, insulin levels naturally start to decline.
Okay.
And when insulin levels decline, that signals to your body to start burning stored fat for energy.
So it's like a signal to say, okay, we're not getting energy from food right now.
Let's tap into those fat reserves.
Yeah, exactly. You've got these stores of energy in the form of fat, and your body is very good at utilizing that when it needs to. And so when insulin levels drop, that's the signal for your body to say, okay, let's start tapping into those fat reserves.
And that process of burning fat for energy, that's often referred to as ketosis.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, ketosis is essentially a metabolic state where your body is primarily using fat for fuel.
Got it. And so even when we're not fasting, if we can keep those blood sugar levels stable, that can kind of help mimic some of those benefits, right?
Exactly, because what happens is when blood sugar levels spike, that triggers a surge in insulin.
Right.
And then, as we talked about, that insulin signals to your body to store fat. So the key is to really maintain stable blood sugar levels throughout the day.
And I think that kind of leads perfectly into talking about food choices because what we eat has a huge impact on those blood sugar levels. So,
Yeah. We often hear about eating to fuel our bodies, but what are some of the foods that really kind of support that idea of like feeding the body and not feeding the fat, if that makes sense?
yeah, that's a great way to put it. We want to be nourishing our bodies, not just, filling them with empty calories.
Right.
So foods that really feed the body are things like protein sources. So things like lean meats, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, lentils. These are all great sources of protein that help to build and repair tissues.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have vegetables and fruits, which are packed with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber, all those good things that our bodies need.
And fiber is so important too for keeping us feeling full and satisfied and helping regulate those blood sugar levels.
Exactly. Yeah. Fiber slows down the digestion and absorption of sugar, so it
Yeah.
prevents those big spikes in blood sugar.
Okay, good to know.
And then we have healthy fats, so things like avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil. These are all great sources of healthy fats that not only provide energy, but also help to keep you feeling full and satisfied.
And they're good for our brain health too, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. They're essential for brain health, hormone production, and many other important functions in the body.
So it's not just about avoiding certain foods. It's really about making sure that we're including these nutrient-rich foods that are actually giving our bodies what they need.
Exactly. It's about focusing on what we can add to our diets rather than just what we need to take away.
Right. And I think that's a much more positive and sustainable way to approach nutrition.
I agree.
So we've talked about fasting, we've talked about food choices, but what about the role of exercise in this whole process of like burning fat and preserving muscle?
Yeah. Exercise is crucial. And, one of the things that exercise does is it helps to burn through those stored sugars that we have in our muscles and liver called glycogen.
Okay.
And once those glycogen stores are depleted, your body becomes much more efficient at burning fat for fuel.
So it's almost like we have to kind of empty those glycogen stores first
Exactly.
before our body's really willing to tap into the fat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, your body prefers to use glycogen for energy when it's available. Makes sense.
But once those stores are depleted, then it's like, okay, now we need to start burning fat.
And so what types of exercise are we talking about here?
Well, even moderate exercise like brisk walking can be very effective, especially during a fasting period,
Okay.
because you're already in a state where your insulin levels are lower, so your body's more primed to burn fat.
Got it. So it's not necessarily about, intense workouts. It's just about moving our bodies.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
consistency is key.
Right. And so both fasting and exercise kind of contribute to that idea of creating an energy deficit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're either taking in fewer calories
Right.
or you're burning more calories through exercise or ideally a combination of both.
Right. So you're creating that environment where your body has to tap into those fat stores.
That's right.
So here's a thought, and this might surprise some people, but you can actually hinder your fat loss efforts even if you're eating healthy foods.
Oh, absolutely.
It all comes down to overeating. Yeah, portion control is so important. Even if you're eating the healthiest foods in the world, if you're consistently eating more calories than your body needs, you're going to store fat.
It goes back to that energy balance, right?
Exactly.
Calories in versus calories out.
That's right.
So it's not just about what we eat, it's about how much we eat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, our bodies are very efficient at storing excess energy as fat. It's a survival mechanism from our evolutionary past,
Right.
when food was scarce.
Right. We had to hold on to those calories.
Exactly.
So it's really important to understand our individual caloric needs and kind of be mindful of those portion sizes.
Yeah, and it's not about obsessing over calories.
Right.
It's just about being aware of how much we're eating and making sure that we're not consistently overeating.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Uh,
We talk about calorie restriction and things like that, but I think sometimes people go to extremes.
right?
They cut their calories drastically.
Yeah.
And that's really not sustainable. And it can actually backfire.
It can.
It can slow down your metabolism. It
Yeah.
can lead to nutrient deficiencies.
And it can make you miserable.
Exactly.
And then you're more likely to binge and kind of fall off track.
Absolutely. So it's really about finding that balance.
Right.
A moderate calorie deficit
Okay.
can be effective, but you don't want to go too extreme.
Right. It's not about deprivation. It's about making sustainable changes
Exactly.
that you can stick with long term.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really important point because, there's so much information out there about health and nutrition,
Right?
and it can be overwhelming.
It can be.
And I think sometimes people get so caught up in the details
Yeah.
that they lose sight of the bigger picture.
Fundamentals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really about those fundamentals.
Absolutely. Eating a healthy diet,
Right.
getting regular exercise,
Managing stress, getting enough sleep.
all those things contribute to overall health.
Right. And when you focus on those things,
Yeah,
the fat loss will kind of take care of itself.
absolutely.
So we've talked about a lot of different strategies today.
Yeah.
Fasting,
Yeah.
food choices,
Exercise.
portion control.
All these things kind of work together
They do.
to create this environment where
Yeah.
fat loss can occur.
Right. And I think the key takeaway here is that
Yeah,
it's not about finding that one magic solution.
right.
It's about taking a holistic approach
Absolutely.
and looking at all these different aspects of our lifestyle.
And making small changes
Yes.
over time
Sustainable changing.
that you can stick with.
Exactly. Because that's how we create lasting results.
Absolutely.
This has been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
I've learned a lot,
Me too.
and I hope our listeners have too.
I hope so.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but obviously there's always more to learn. And if you're interested in diving deeper into any of these topics,
Yeah.
we encourage you to check out our website,
Yourhealthfacts.com.
yourhealthfacts.com.
That's right.
Where we have tons of articles,
I do.
recipes,
Yeah.
and other resources
All kinds of good stuff.
to support you on your health journey.
Absolutely. It's been great talking about this stuff.
Yeah, it's so important.
And I think, one thing to keep in mind is that everyone's different.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. We all have different bodies,
You do.
different lifestyle.
Different genetics.
So it's really about finding what works for you
Absolutely.
and not being afraid to experiment.
That's right.
Try different things.
See what feels good.
See what gives you results.
Yeah, and listen to your body.
That's so important.
Your body will tell you what it needs.
And if you're ever unsure,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out to a qualified healthcare professional. They can help you kind of personalize your approach.
That's right.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
It is.
There's so much more to learn
There is.
about health and nutrition.
Yeah.
And we're always learning.
Absolutely.
There's always new research coming out.
New discoveries.
So it's important to stay curious, stay informed.
And keep learning.
Exactly.
And, one of the things that we're passionate about is making sure that people have access to accurate and reliable health information.
Right.
And that's why we created yourhealthfacts.com.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
It is.
For anyone who wants to learn more about health and wellness.
All sorts of topics.
Evidence-based information.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking to kind of dive deeper
Yeah.
into any of these topics, we encourage you to check it out.
It's a great community of people who are passionate about health.
Yes. So we've been talking today about how to lose fat without losing muscle.
Yeah.
And we've covered a lot of different strategies.
We have.
But I think the most important takeaway is that it's possible.
It is.
You don't have to sacrifice your hard-earned muscle in order to achieve your fat loss goals.
That's right.
It's about making those sustainable changes to your lifestyle.
And taking a holistic approach.
Exactly.
And being patient.
Yes, patience is key.
It is.
It's a journey.
Absolutely.
It's not a quick fix.
That's right.
But it's so worth it.
Yes.
When you start to see those results.
Yeah, and you feel better.
And you feel better.
You have more energy.
Yeah, your health improves.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
On your Health Facts podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
Be sure to subscribe to yourhealthfacts.com for more health-related information and resources.